You'd think the biggest meat packer on the planet prints money by default? It doesn't. In the first quarter of 2025, JBS, the largest meat company in the world, sold $6.4 billion of beef through its North American division. It still finished that quarter $100 million in the red. A negative margin on beef from the company that owns more slaughter capacity than anyone alive. So how does an industry that kills over 30 million cattle a year in the United States alone, an industry so consolidated that 4 companies control 85% of it, manage to lose money at the top of the food chain? Turns out the fantasy of owning a slaughterhouse and the actual economics of one have almost nothing in common. Let's find out what you're really buying. Dead animal walking. Let's start with the entry fee. At the bottom, you're looking at a custom or state-inspected operation, small enough to serve local ranchers and farm-to-table butchers, not big enough to ship across state lines. Industry consultants peg greenfield construction at around $400 per square foot for a facility handling maybe 20 head a week. By the time you've added refrigeration, drainage, waste handling, and a walk-in cooler that can hold a 2-week backlog of carcasses, you're somewhere between $500,000 and $3 million before you've slaughtered a single animal. And that's before payroll. Move up to mid-market, and the arithmetic changes shape entirely. This is federally inspected territory, the tier that can legally sell across state lines, which is the only tier that can actually scale. Riverbend Meats in Idaho Falls took $25 million in federal grant money just to double its daily capacity from 300 head to 600. Not build from scratch, double an existing plant. That's the real cost of federal inspection infrastructure. Pipe, gas lines, automated chill rooms, compliance staff whose entire job is satisfying an inspector who can shut your line down on a whim. Then there's the top tier, and this is where the fantasy either becomes real or gets crushed under its own weight. Cattlemen's Heritage is building a new plant near Council Bluffs, Iowa for $325 million. Finished capacity, 1,500 head of cattle a day. Run the math, and that's over $200,000 of capital for every single animal the plant can process in 24 hours. At that scale, you're not building a business anymore. You're building infrastructure that 4 companies have spent 45 years consolidating around, and you're betting you can survive in the gap they've left behind. Which raises an obvious question. If the entry cost is this brutal and the margins are already this thin, where does anyone actually make money? Here's the part nobody puts on the tour. A live steer isn't one product. Think of it the way a phone company thinks about a phone. The device itself is barely the business. The real money is everything sold after the sale. A carcass converts to what the industry calls hot weight the moment it's killed, and from there, every plant is chasing what's called dressing percentage, the ratio of that carcass weight to the animal's original live weight. For cattle, that number sits around 60 to 63%. The other 37 to 40%, hide, bone, blood, organs, fat, doesn't vanish. It becomes what packers call drop credit, and it gets sold separately. Hides to tanneries, fat to renderers, organs to pharmaceutical and pet food buyers, blood to biotech. On a low-margin commodity like a beef carcass, that drop credit can be the entire difference between a profitable week and a loss. Here's the detail that should bother you more than it probably will. Henry Ford toured a Chicago slaughterhouse in the early 1900s and walked away with the idea for the assembly line. Except what he actually saw was a disassembly line, carcasses moving past stationary workers who each removed one part. Ford just ran the film backward and built cars with it. The entire architecture of modern industrial manufacturing was reverse engineered from a kill floor. So the animal isn't the product. The animal is raw material for 40 different products wearing one skin. Which starts to explain why a company can sell $6 billion of beef and still lose money. But it doesn't explain everything. There's a reason you've never actually seen inside one of these plants. That's not an accident. It's engineering. Walk the layout of a modern beef plant and you'll notice something. There are no windows facing the kill floor. No public entrance anywhere near it. Plants are disproportionately sited in small, isolated towns. Rural Nebraska, rural Kansas, rural North Carolina. Chosen as much for distance from urban scrutiny and access to cheap labor as for proximity to cattle. And in more than a dozen states, lawmakers have passed what critics call ag-gag laws. Statutes that make it a criminal offense to film inside an agricultural facility without the owner's permission. Think about what that actually is. It's not a security measure. It's a liability shield built directly into the architecture and the legal code, protecting the one thing that can destroy a slaughterhouse faster than any balance sheet problem: somebody with a camera. The plant isn't just processing animals, it's engineered physically and legally to make sure nobody outside the fence line ever finds out how. Which works right up until it doesn't. Debt kills quietly. A camera kills instantly. Here are two companies that found that out the hard way. Thorn Apple Valley started as a single Detroit butcher shop in 1949 and grew, acquisition by acquisition, into one of the Midwest's largest pork processors. By the late 90s, the growth had buried the company in $182 million of debt. In 1999, a product recall spooked a major customer into issuing a stop payment on $800,000 in checks. That single stop payment triggered the collapse. When the company was finally sold off, the entire sale price, $115 million, went straight to creditors. The people who built it walked away with nothing. The debt didn't cause the recall, but the debt is why the recall was fatal instead of survivable. Then there's Hallmark and Westland Meatpacking, out of Chino, California. In 2008, an undercover investigator for the Humane Society filmed workers using forklifts to force sick and injured cattle, animals too weak to walk on their own, toward the kill line. The footage went public. The fallout forced the largest meat recall in American history at the time. 143 million pounds of beef, some of it already eaten in school cafeterias. The company had no debt crisis. It had a camera problem, and it collapsed just as completely as Thorn Apple Valley did. Thorn Apple Valley bled out slowly from debt no one could see coming. Hallmark and Westland went in one afternoon, from a camera no one saw coming either. Which one should scare you more? So, add it up. The conceptual equation is brutally simple. Buy the animal once, sell every fraction of it separately, and pray your leverage and your reputation both survive long enough to collect. Realistic net margins across the industry sit in the low single digits. JBS closed 2025 with $86.2 billion in revenue and $2 billion in net income, a margin just above 2% on an operation that spans 4 continents. And JBS itself is the proof of how far this model can go when it works. The company's own corporate history traces back to 1953, to a single slaughterhouse in Anápolis, Brazil, processing 5 cattle a day. 7 decades later, that same blueprint, buy the animal, waste nothing, keep the operation out of view, built the largest meat company on earth. The math hasn't changed since 1953. Buy the whole animal, sell every gram of it under a different name, and just make sure the debt and the camera never find you in the same year. If you've ever worked a line like this, or you've got a story about what actually happens behind that fence, drop it in the comments. We read all of them.